There truly is no better time to be alive than right now. Welcome to the Upward and Onward podcast. Let's get it. What's going on, guys? We are back with another episode of the Upward and Onward podcast, where we focus on entrepreneurship, creativity, and business. And today we have two gentlemen in Rhode Island that you need to know when it comes to buying, selling, and investing in real estate. John Alsfeld, how's it going?
It's going good, Ollie. How are you?
I'm doing very well. I'm happy that you're here, man.
I'm happy too. It's been long awaited.
It has been. John Gesualdi, how you doing?
What's going on, man? I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Okay, so I have one question for each of you. And John Alsfeld, you're going to go first.
Okay.
If you had to use one word to describe yourself to someone who doesn't know you, what word would you use?
I'm going to say passionate.
Okay. Why would you say passionate?
Because I only do things that I truly like to do.
Yeah.
You know, I don't like to waste my time doing things that I don't like. So
Okay.
I would say everything that I do involve myself in, I'm pretty passionate about it.
I love that. How about for you, John Gesualdi?
I think the word is relentless.
Ooh, relentless. What makes you say that?
It's shown in real estate just because you have to be on top of people sometimes, especially if you're trying to manage a transaction for a client. They might be doing everything in their power to get it done, but you also have to manage the actions of people on another side. So a lot of times I have to really stay on top of people, make sure we're hitting deadlines and doing the right things to get the job done. So I think the relentless trait kind of helps me in that sense. And sometimes it can be annoying, but I think it helps in terms of real estate and then also like in personal life too, just getting things done that you want to do.
Hell yeah.
So
I'd say that's crucial. I mean, you need a guy when you trust someone to help you purchase a home, sell your home, or find an investment property to get the job done.
that's one thing I've noticed is that like you could start in real estate and start doing it, but then when you realize that like people are really relying on you, it puts a sense of pressure on you in a good way. And if the transaction isn't going the way it needs to, you need to make sure it goes down that route.
Fair.
And there's a lot of problem solving like included in it. So
I
you
believe
have to be relentless. You know, if you're in real estate or in any job really where you're servicing a client.
True.
For that matter.
Yeah.
Very
I
true.
agree with that.
So what's your word?
My word, one word to describe myself, creative. I'd say I like to try new things. I like to explore the curiosities that I have and just try to find solutions to problems that come up in my life and just in my mind. So yeah, creative. Find a way, make a way. So we talked about one word to describe yourselves. What I'm curious about is how you each got started with real estate. And I'll ask John Alsfeld first, our loan officer here. And yeah, how'd you get started?
I had a friend working at a mortgage company. He got me set up there, and then it's been good passion ever since. It's a passion for like helping and like serving others that are trying to achieve that goal of like owning a property, you know?
That's right, which is a huge milestone in people's lives. So it's really cool that you're always in on that and seeing that really often.
Yeah. I like to be kind of like that level-headed person for them because obviously you bought a house. Like when you go through it, there are things that come up that can be stressful and you need to be that solid ground for them to get them through it.
I think it's worked out for you too because you're very good in an advisory role because that's kind of like what you have to be as a loan officer.
Yeah.
But for people that don't know watching, like a lot of loan officers rely on real estate agents for business because they are the ones that have the buyers and they need funding. So I send a lot of business to John, and it's not because he's my friend, but he's really good at advising clients when they're not level-headed because it's very emotional time when you're like trying to get approved for a mortgage. You don't know how much you can afford, but then the housing prices are through the roof, so it could be very stressful. So I feel like you're good at managing those expectations and like helping them like really understand like this is what you can afford, like this is where you need to be looking. It needs to be lower than your max, and like you can help them tailor like a solution to that.
Because I mean, interest rates change daily, right? So at the end of the day, you don't qualify for a purchase price, you qualify for a monthly payment, and then that monthly payment turns into like a sale price depending on how much you're putting down, how much cash you have. I like that you described it that way because it is more of just than writing a loan. Like I'm like, all right guys, like let's look at your finances. Like where are you budgeting on a monthly basis for this? Because I could give you a pre-approval for whatever you qualify for, but that may not be what you want to take on.
It helps me because a lot of times people come to me with mortgage questions or they come to me with a house that they saw on Zillow that looks really cool. But a lot of the times it's like I advise them, talk to a loan officer first, make sure you're pre-approved, know what you're working with, understand what the monthly payment is at that purchase price, and then we can go look for houses. It's not because I'm trying to pass you off because I don't want to deal with you so early in the transaction. It's because it's easier for you to understand, and you can decide based off the monthly payment if you want to go see the house, because you don't want to go see a house, fall in love with it, and then go talk to the lender and find out it's 3,000 a month and it's way out of budget. And now you're heartbroken, and you kind of have a salty taste about the real estate market. It's much easier to know first what you're working with, then look at what's out there, and then you can fall in love with a house like based on that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Sorry to hijack.
No, you guys are going for it. I love this. You guys high energy. You guys are ready to talk and ready to give some people who are listening and watching insight that they wouldn't have. So let's get it. But you did mention that you started in real estate during COVID. What a time to start, man.
Yeah, crazy. It's actually been nice though, because when I got into the business, mortgage rates were at 2.5%. At the peak, they were close to 8. In a short amount of time, I've been in the business for almost 5 years now. I've seen a full scale level of just financing, because 2.5%, virtually everybody can qualify. And at 7.5%, not many people qualify, or they need a large down payment, or the market is just totally different in all aspects in those different interest rate ranges. So I feel like I've gained much more experience from surviving through that time.
True. Very true. And how about for yourself, John? When did you get started in real estate?
So same way as John, I kind of stumbled upon real estate. I was working a full-time job for an insurance company, and I had a friend who was like just getting started in the business, and he was just kind of telling me about it. Every transaction is different. So every situation he was in, he would tell me about. And so he actually had a friend who owned a real estate team where he took on newer agents and kind of helped them and developed them. So I had just finished my master's at the time, so I now had like some free time available. So I just took on like going for the license and just see how it went from there. So I took the classes and I found it interesting, just some of the things that you learn about the business in general. So I passed the real estate exam and I was like, okay, I might as well put this to use. So I started working for a brokerage by myself at first, and I just did a lot of classes and things to learn about it. And then I just saw the opportunity that I could help a lot of family and friends and make some money along the way. So that was kind of what I went for. And I started to appreciate it a little bit once I started doing some transactions and getting some experience. It's really tough starting out, because it's a lot of pressure to sell, especially someone to sell them a house and make sure you do a good job, because it's more than just finding them a house. You really need to manage a transaction for that person. So that's how I got started, and just been doing deals ever since, getting more experience, and now starting to be a little bit more of a savvy agent in the market. And now I can like truly advise people on how to move forward.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially with the market changing so frequently, at least over these past couple of years.
Yeah.
Like John, you
It's
mentioned.
been wild. It's
Honestly,
been a wild ride.
you've gained probably more experience in these past years than you would have in 10 years if the market had just stayed the same. So
The other thing too, though, is like transactionally, when rates are 2.5%, there are so many transactions because everyone's looking to refi. Like everyone's making moves because it's basically free money at that point. And when you get up to the higher end, there's not as many transactions. So it's two different worlds.
I can only imagine.
Explain a refinance to some of the listeners, because I know on our level it sounds super simple, but you'd be surprised how many buyers I talk to who they hear the word refi and they nod because it sounds like a good thing, but they don't truly understand what that means and the value in it.
Okay. So you can do a cash out refinance or just a rate and term refinance, depending on your scenario. But say the interest rates move 1%. That might make sense for somebody with a higher loan amount because you're borrowing more money amortized over a longer loan term. If somebody has a smaller loan amount, that 1% might not save them as much on a monthly basis. So when we do like a break even analysis of like, okay, like you're going to be saving X amount, but the refinance is going to cost you X amount in like attorney fees, loan fees, this, that, the other. It's all about what makes sense financially at the end of the day.
I see.
But
So
essentially,
two types of refi.
two types.
Okay.
You can do cash out if you have the equity in your property and you want to say buy another property, do an upgrade. You can actually access that capital through a cash out refi.
Okay.
You restart your whole loan, 30 years, everything's restarted, new your old loan basically gets paid off.
I see.
I guess that's kind of a good point to bring up. Like your old loan is gone, and then you totally start a brand new one.
Interesting.
And then rate and term is the same thing though. The old loan gets paid off, you start a new loan,
Okay.
and you basically restart at your 30-year term.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. That's a hot topic in the real estate market today because there's a lot of people out there who want to sell their homes because the home prices are so high, but the interest rates are high too. So it just doesn't make sense for them to sell their home and buy something else where they might have a 2% interest rate and then trade it in for a 7-8% interest rate. It just doesn't make sense. And then that's why there's such a lack of inventory right now and people aren't selling their houses.
Okay.
So when people say that, the real estate market is going to crash soon, it's going to be tough to do that with such a low inventory because the demand is still so high. There's not a lot of houses for sale. And at the end of the day, everyone needs a place to live.
Yeah.
So people are still going to be out looking to buy a house.
Yeah.
And as long as there's not enough houses for sale, there's going to be a high demand. So that's kind of like the effect that the rates have on the market. And that's why like refinancing is such a hot topic because a lot of sellers are asking those questions.
So interesting because I feel like, at least from COVID and rates being 2.5%, there was a shortage in terms of inventory because there was such a high demand and people were just looking to buy a home or flip or do whatever they had to do. And then as time went on, not only was the demand so high, but then there was like just shortage in terms of supplies. And then now what's happening is people are not even selling their homes at the rate that people are maybe willing to buy them and hoping to buy them. So it seems like it's been like a snowball effect over these past couple of years of just shortage and now the demand being so high.
Yeah, the majority of sellers that I see in the market today are either people who have a second home, or they just, there was a death in the family or something like that, and they have a house to sell. Like those are the majority of sellers that I see in the market today. But it's not too often where you see someone who has like a single family home. They might have refinanced during that boom during COVID when the rates were 2%. There's not too many people that are trading that in to then go buy another house.
I would say the other thing to the people in the market right now, they have to upsize. They had a kid, something happened. Maybe they're bringing in family members to just go to one household instead of two. They're upsizing. Or on the contrary, if there was a death in the family, they need to downsize.
Yeah.
There's no one really just being like, oh, like, let's just go buy a house right now. Like, that's kind of the difference of like 2.5%. It's pretty easy to just be like, okay,
It's time. Like
let's see what's going on.
Yeah.
But back to what you said about the market crashing. The reason the market crashed in 2008 was because they ramped up the building of homes so rapidly versus the amount of people that needed them. So once you hit that breaking point where there's like too many homes and not enough people that want them, then that's obviously when prices come down. We're in the complete opposite right now. We have way too many people that need homes, and new construction is not keeping up with that, along with a high interest rate environment, and nobody wants to sell. Why would you trade a 2 or 3% interest rate for a 6 or a 7?
Man, that's, it's kind of unfortunate though for the majority of people because I feel like if you were to want to have made a move, say 2 years ago when things were at 2.5% and maybe they got a little higher, and then you said, "Oh, I'll wait and see what the market does."
Yeah.
As time's gone on, it's gotten harder and harder. So
It's really unfortunate for the first-time home buyers or the people in our age demographic that are looking to get their first house and they don't want to buy something tiny or not as nice. If you want like a raised ranch in Johnston, Cranston, Smithfield, that's going to run you 450, 500 nowadays. That's just the reality of what it is. And then around that time, around COVID, you could get a house like that for 350, 400. But it's like, that price now looks amazing. But at the time, we were like 350, 400. That's a crazy price.
true.
So it just keeps going up, and it's unfortunate for the first-time home buyers. So now what we're doing as agents is we're trying to help them be competitive in other ways aside from the price. And that's really the way that you have to do it now.
So let me ask you this: on both sides of the coin, right? We have the guy who's going to help anyone out with funding when they're buying an investment property, a first-time house, a new house. But we're also going to talk about on the real estate agent side. So you mentioned getting savvy and just creative with the offers. What are things that you're doing nowadays to get creative with these offers?
Well, a lot of it has to do with the funding part of it because there's a lot of ways you can move your money around and structure your offer. A lot of buyers are taking advantage of what's called a seller credit. I'll let John talk about that more because that's more of his domain. But if you can structure the offer in a way that works for you financially, you can then be able to up your purchase power a little bit. People are getting savvy with the home inspections. Obviously, a lot of people waive them. but there's other ways that you can do it as well. I always tell people, if you know a home inspector or if you know someone who's savvy about houses, bring them with you to the open house. That's free. And you know what? If you know going into it that it's a decent house, you just have to make sure it has good bones. If the structure is good, if it has a new roof, if you take a look at it, it looks decent. You know, how old is the heating system, the water heater, those types of things. Those are the important things. How's the location? You can change everything about your house. You can't change the location. Okay.
Yeah.
So like those are things that
True
you
that.
want to be focused on. You don't want to just see like, all right, was the kitchen recently updated? Because a lot of people just put a facelift on a house, but it's really got issues. So like, you know, you have to be careful when waiving a home inspection, but it does help you make your offer
Win
more
an
competitive.
offer.
Closing date. You need to worry about what the seller is most interested in. A lot of times the seller has a deadline that they need to sell by. They might be closing on another house. So you need to be able to meet their requirements. That could be one thing that could set you aside. A lot of sellers sell their house subject to them finding another place to live. So if you can wait for them to find that other house, or if you can meet a tight deadline, then that helps you as well. So there's a lot of things you can do. Your deposit. So this isn't your down payment with the mortgage company. This is like a good faith deposit when you get your offer accepted.
Escrow.
Yes. So you put it in escrow. It's not additional money on the sale. It's you pay it up front and then it gets deducted from your closing costs. But if you can put a good deposit down up front, that shows the seller that you're serious about this house and you're not going to back out, because there's value in that too.
I'll add one thing to that too. For when I got my house, we wrote a letter to the sellers.
I love that.
I did one too for my condo.
I did one too.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
it's personable. It shows that you're serious, because realistically, anybody who has a pre-approval can just submit an offer.
That's fair.
If you take the time to write like a nice, like thoughtful letter, like, hey, like, we love your house, like, we want to buy your house.
Yep.
Like, here's why we want to buy your house. Here's who we are.
Yeah.
You kind of gain some like rapport with the seller almost, even
Yeah.
though like you'll never meet them realistically.
Yeah.
And it helps, I would say.
When my girlfriend and I bought our condo, we wrote a letter as well, and we like included a picture of ourselves holding the dog or whatever. And so the sellers actually had a dog of their own, and I guess like because we were in a crazy bidding war when we bought our condo, and they pretty much called like the agent. So the agent was the mother of the seller.
Okay.
And like they bought the condo around a similar age as us. And she had called me the day that she accepted the offer and was like, you know what? Like there were other people that had like a no cap on their escalation clause. So you were technically outbid, but she was like, they kind of saw themselves in you and they wanted to give you a break because someone else gave them a break when they were first getting started in the market. So for that reason, they're going to accept your offer.
Wow.
They like that you have the dog and things like that. So they kind of want that to like carry on.
Interesting.
So you'd be surprised. It sounds corny, but you'd be surprised how far the letter can go.
100%,
Yeah.
dude. Similar for us. We had the same exact thing. We wrote a letter saying that we wanted to get a dog in the house, and they had a dog. And then also, one thing that I did, which maybe I didn't have to, but I said I'd give them $1,000 for their moving costs because he was an older man who had just been diagnosed with cancer. He was moving down to North Carolina. And I said, hey, least I could do is give you some money to cover the cost to move. So that's a way that I tried to be a little creative and competitive.
Yeah.
But I imagine people maybe sprinkle in whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, wow. Well, I've seen, honestly, I've had some people like get creative with like the offer number. They'll put like the street number in there, so it's not like 385,000. Say the house was 17 whatever street. It would be like 385,017.
Oh.
And then they would, in their letter, they'd be like, we put 17 in there because it's the street number. Like,
Honestly,
but anything to stand out though, like it doesn't matter what it is. Realistically, at the end of the day, people can laugh at it, throw it away, whatever. If you get the house, you get the house.
you got
So
the house.
might as well shoot your shot.
Honestly, bidding on a house can get so competitive that literally like things like that, anything you can use to your advantage helps.
Yeah.
I believe it. I totally believe it. So you guys both had mentioned first-time home buyers, and those people could be listening right now. Are there things that first-time home buyers need to know?
I would say first-time home buyers, one important thing, whether you're ready to buy now, 3 months, 6 months, a year, connect with someone like me, connect with a real estate agent, get through the pre-approval process. Let someone guide you through everything that you need in order to be ready to buy. It's just good because I've come across scenarios personally where they'll wait on the pre-approval process because that's like the home buying turning into a reality. Because at the end of the day, that really is like all right, like I'm ready. Now I am,
I'm in.
I'm the closest I can be to buying a house once I have that pre-approval letter, right? But I've seen people hold off on it, and there may be an issue with their credit. They may not understand how much money they actually need. They may not understand what they qualify for. Then when they actually want to buy, they're not ready to be approved.
Yeah.
So I would say anybody out there, give me a call. We'll get you pre-approved. We'll set up a game plan for you, whether that's now, 3 months, 6 months, a year, and we'll just keep the conversations going.
I just want to build off what you said too about like waiting to get approved till after you go see the house, because then it becomes like a big reality. I see a lot of people get burned by doing that because they just want to go see the house. Like, oh, I don't want to deal with the lender and fill out an application and all that. I'll do that after I see the house. Let me go see if I like it first. But what happens is open houses take place on the weekends. And in today's real estate market, offers are typically due on the following Monday or the Tuesday afterwards. So a lot of people, they go, they see the house, and even if they are qualified for it, they'll go, they'll fall in love with it, and then there'll be this hard deadline on offers. And the seller's agent isn't waiting on you because there's so many people buying the house. So it ends up just being they don't have enough time to get all these documents ready. They don't give their lender enough time to get a pre-approval letter turned out. And I don't know if you know this, but you can't place an offer to buy a house without submitting proof of funding. Even if you're buying in cash, you need to be able to submit, a snapshot of your bank statement to prove that you can pay for the house. So a lot of people, they show up to the open house without figuring out their funding situation first, and then they can't get things together in time and end up missing out on the house that they like.
Or it's just tough to do that because I mean, I work weekends, nights because that's just the schedule of the real estate market.
Yeah.
But if you have a complex scenario, then I might need to have your whole file reviewed by an underwriter. I might need to go to my sales manager and say, hey, what do you think about this scenario? They're doing XYZ. It's not always as simple as like you submit an application, you get a pre-approval. I need to do a full, thorough review of credit, income, assets, documentation to support all of it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it can be done quickly, but at the same time, it also could take a day or two.
Yeah.
That's just the reality of it.
So as a first-time home buyer, this is really important to know. It's understanding today's market. And I know as a first-time home buyer, it's scary. So you like to lean on people who have done it before in the past, and it may be your family or whatever. But what you need to understand is that the housing market has changed so much since the last generation bought their homes. And sometimes if you lean on them too much for advice, you might find yourself just nitpicking at any little thing in a house just because you're a little bit nervous about it. And then what usually ends up happening is people kind of get this sort of remorse where it's like they pass on houses over the smallest little things. And then, 6 months goes by and now the housing market is another 50 grand higher than what it was before. And then they look back and say, wow, I should have bought that condo back then around 300,000. Like I thought that was a lot back then. And, it had a couple of like minor issues, like it had a carpet that needed to be replaced or whatever. But now you're looking at houses that are almost 50 grand more and they have real issues. So it's like, you can't rely too much on that. The most important thing as a home buyer is to just understand the market. Look at what other houses are selling at in today's market. Pay attention to how quickly they sell. That gives you a good indication of how ready you need to be, what your offer needs to look like as well, because people go and they place their first offer and they're like, oh, you know what, I'll just throw in a lowball offer. But they might really like it, but it's just their first offer, so they're a little nervous and they come nowhere near close. And I see a lot of buyers get really disappointed when their offers get declined. It happens 3-4 times, and then now they start to think, oh, I can't afford a home. Well, it's not really that. It's just you need to understand the market and be able to place a competitive offer and know and understand that it's going to be a process. And you're probably going to get a couple of offers declined before you get one accepted.
Yeah.
And the deal's not over once it's accepted. There's still a lot that can go on throughout the transaction to get you to the closing table.
Which is where you come in, right? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I start in the beginning because at the end of the day, they're not going to see houses unless they're pre-approved because then it's kind of just a waste of time,
Yep.
Because they could just not qualify at all.
Yeah.
You never know. Like sometimes you really don't know what you're going to walk into.
but what's something that like someone should know, say after they even have gotten a pre-approval, they've reached out to John and he's their real estate agent now,
Okay.
and they have that waiting period of the offer has been accepted and they're waiting for closing. What are some things that they should do and maybe not do during that time?
One thing you should definitely not do after you get an offer accepted is run up your credit card with things for the new house
Okay.
because that will just cause issues with financing.
Or buy a car.
Don't buy a car. So what's something that they should do?
Should do.
One thing that you should do when you have an offer accepted is make sure that the communication is going back and forth between the lender, myself, your real estate agent, John. Just make sure everyone's kind of like collaborating. And don't be afraid to ask questions, because I think people get a little bit too nervous that they're being annoying, but I tell everybody, I'm like, there are no stupid questions here. I don't expect you to know everything, and you definitely won't know everything. So please ask me, because you're gonna have a better experience in the home buying process if you feel informed. Nobody wants to do anything that they just like sign papers and then they have keys at the end of it. You know what I mean? That's not really
Totally.
enjoyable to me.
Totally.
A lot of buyers think that like the inspection process is a pass or fail. That's really not how it works. The way the inspection process works is a licensed inspector comes into the house and they give you a list of things that they think need to be fixed. Now, if it's a big ticket item like a roof, those are situations where the buyer then goes to the seller and says, "Hey, the roof needs to be replaced. I either want to deduct that price from the sale price, or we need to work something out to meet in the middle, or you need to replace it prior to closing." So the inspection isn't a pass or fail. It's more used as a negotiation tool to then like refigure out the deal from that point forward. I feel like that's a common misconception for buyers that like, okay, what if it fails? Then do I not get the house? No, you can still get the house. It's just you're going to probably want to renegotiate with the seller at that time. And usually they will, because if you look at it this way, if the roof needs to be replaced, the seller could say, you know what, I'll go find another buyer. But the reality is it's going to come up in the next deal anyways.
Yeah.
They're most likely going to have to replace it. So that's kind of where the inspection comes into play for a buyer.
Dude.
This is definitely a pro financing tip. If you have to negotiate something from the inspection, do not ask for a price reduction, ask for a seller credit.
All right. So thanks for sharing all that. Tons of insight. Now, for our current state in the market, what are your projections and what are you guys expecting looking ahead this year and then even going into 2025?
So I would expect that the rest of the 2024 is going to be a little bit crazy. There's a lot of talks about the Fed cutting interest rates in September, which is next month, which is fantastic news. And they're expected to continue to cut throughout the rest of 2024. So I think that's going to bring a lot of confidence back to the consumers. But one thing we need to keep in mind is we've been in such a high interest rate environment for so long now. And each rate hike that they did took a lot of time to actually do the job to where we are now, where we're in a position to cut. I think you're going to see the same thing on the way down. I think it's going to be a delayed reaction to these cuts. As far as mortgage rates, though, I think you're still going to see them continue to go down. I mean, as of right now, they're down almost a whole percent in the last like 30 days. So that's been a sharp move. I think you'll continue to see them fall down, and into 2025 will probably be in the mid to high five range, which would be good.
Yeah.
I think it's a good, because that's close enough to 3% where most people are, to where they can make a case for, oh, it's 5.5, but I'm getting the better house that I need, versus 3 to 7.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. How about for you, John?
On my end, I think, like John said, the interest rates are coming down a little bit. So this could mean two things. One, I think that the market's going to stay competitive, because what happened was interest rates went up. So a lot of people who were interested in buying a house, they kind of sat out on the sidelines and have been waiting for this. So I think a lot of people who have been on the sidelines are going to start to re-enter the market and take advantage of this opportunity and try to get a house now, which is good, right? Because, everyone needs a place to live, but it might, stay competitive in terms of placing offers. I think there's going to be more inventory coming to the market as a result of this. I mentioned earlier, a lot of sellers didn't want to sell because they had a low interest rate, didn't want to trade it in for a higher interest rate. Well, if the rates come down to a reasonable area and it's time to either downsize or upgrade to something else, it might be worth it for them, because their house is worth so much more than what it was when they paid for it. And that's why real estate is such a good long-term investment, because the equity you build up in the home, you can then use to go buy your forever home. So I think there will be a little bit more inventory on the market. Buyers will have a little bit more to choose from, but I think it'll still be competitive. You'll still see busy open houses. And buyers are really going to have to continue to be savvy about the way that they're placing offers and just surround themselves with the right people.
So I just realized that you not only have a primary residence, but you also own an investment property. Can you tell us about that?
Don't do it. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, it's honestly, it's been, you learn a lot. Obviously, the first one, you go through trials, tribulations, whatever you want to call it. But still, long term is my goal. So I'm not too worried about anything in the current right now. I've had to do repairs, this, that, the other, but it's all good.
Yeah.
It's all good.
It's
I
all
can't
worth it.
complain about it. I have great tenants. which is a good thing.
One of the things that I was curious about is like, say if someone has an investment property and they are renting out the home and over 10 years they've gathered some equity, would they then be able to use that equity that's in their investment property to buy a second investment property?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can do a cash out refinance on non-owner occupied properties as well.
Interesting.
So the only thing is you can go up to a 75% loan to value versus if it was your primary residence, you go to 80. It's not that much of a difference if you have a ton of it in there. But yeah, you can access that capital, and we even have these loans now called HE loans. You can do them on your primary or an investment. It's a second mortgage, which is great because you don't have to get rid of your low interest rate if you have one, but you take out a second mortgage and you can do a cash out that way too and access that capital. It's been good to have those because people don't want to get rid of their 2 or 3%, but they also need the cash that their house is accrued all this time, you know?
Makes sense.
All right, so we talked about real estate, but let's talk about what you're doing because you're kind of like getting into like the creator space a little bit now. Like you're doing your podcast, like you're working with other entrepreneurs. So like, what's the avenue like you're going down right now?
Yeah. For me, so like this all really started as a hobby, and it was maybe COVID time, and I was just home, cooped up, watching videos online, YouTube, Nelk Boys, just Instagram videos.
Shout out Elk Boys.
Shout out to Nelk Boys. Love to have you. You know what it was, dude? Now that I think about it, it was me wanting to do it, but then I met Bob Menery.
Oh, I can't believe that.
Wait, you were doing the podcast before you met Bob.
No, I
No,
wasn't.
he wasn't.
I told him that I wanted to start doing content actually. And like after hanging out with him and like him being himself and just kind of like free spirited and having fun,
He is a free spirit.
he is a free spirit. I was like, man, if there were a way where I was able to do something similar and over time maybe just be able to live more of a free life, I would like to do that. And I found that it was just interesting. It was a way for me to get out there, talk to new people, learn about new things, and what would be better than me knowing all that, but then to share it with people. So
Yeah.
I figured start this podcast. Honestly, I was like, I'm not listening to anybody. Like, I'm just going to start doing stuff. And I just started to have more and more fun with it. And different opportunities would come from it. And just the people that I met. And yeah, man, it's just like, was a hobby. And long term, if this thing ends up being something that is more than just a hobby, that'll be great. But
Hell yeah.
at least in the meantime, having fun.
I was going to say, dude, you've probably built up a ridiculous network just from doing the podcast alone. Cause I see you talk to people like in all kinds of industries, like, and they do all kinds of things. Even just coming into this podcast studio, like I didn't know a legitimate podcast studio like this existed. And there's like these cool people in here that like, they know so much about like all this stuff and like setting it up the correct, like there's a strategy to it.
Yeah.
Like we're not just out here slinging a
Right.
podcast. So like, just even the net, like how close you are with them, like you must have built a crazy network and know people that do things of like of all industries.
This is like cool too, because like I remember you used to like watch a lot like on streams and all that stuff and like other podcasts too. So when you said like I'm not watching anybody else, like
Dude,
just put that time that you were watching into like doing, Yeah.
Exactly, man.
which is the cool part. That's
Yeah.
definitely the cool part of the whole story.
Thank you. Yeah, man. So yeah, thank you guys for joining me because we've talked about it, and I'm happy that it's happened now, and I'm happy for both of you. I'm proud of both of you.
I was saying, I'm proud of you.
I'm proud of
Look
you.
at this studio. I was
Proud of
nervous
you.
coming
I'm
in
proud of
here.
you.
Proud of you too.
Yeah, I'm proud of you.
I'm proud of
Look
you.
at that. Yeah.
Good for us. I think we all deserve a little pat on the back because we have been trying. We've been trying our
Yeah.
best. So
Fine.
there's more that we could talk about. What I think we're gonna have to do, guys, is we're gonna have to come back here and chat up some more sometime soon.
Okay.
Is that
Yeah,
cool
I'm
with
down.
people? All right,
Yeah.
cool. So thank you guys for sharing everything that you know about real estate. Now, if there's someone out there who's listening to this podcast or watching, and they're thinking to themselves, "Man, John Gesualdi, John Alsfeld, really cool guys. They seem to know a lot about what they're talking about. They also are just really chill. I want to be like them one day." John Jez, what would you say to someone like that?
I would just say go for it and just get after it, really. I mean, there's no other way to learn something or to grow in any other way than to just kind of pound the pavement every single day and just keep working at it. Neither of us learned anything about real estate overnight, or neither of us, have gotten anywhere in life by just sitting around like hoping that something would happen. And the same thing with you. Like you were just like, you know what, I'm going to do a podcast. Like I'm just doing it. And now look at you, you have this legit studio. Like you have all these guests that come on, you have this crazy network. So you just got to pound the pavement every day. And, you can learn something, you can grow. I'm not saying that will make you the most successful person in the world. I'm not So, but I mean, you can learn something and then you can share it with someone else. So,
Yeah. How about for you?
I would say surrounding yourself with the right people is a huge part of that too. And even when times are not going well with whatever you're doing, take a step back and realize it's not going to be like that straight line up. It's going to be like peaks and valleys all the way up there. So staying focused, surrounding yourself with the right people, and just keeping the goals simple. I've found for me, because I did coaching this year for work, which is really cool, and just keeping the goals simple helps a lot. Because if you try to, it's great to have huge goals, but there also has to be a reality portion to that. And if you want to grow faster or just become better in any way, keeping it simple and just knocking something down at a time, faster and faster, it's a good way to get moving.
Hell yeah. You got that momentum.
I want your take on that though. All right, Al, you got this podcast going now. Like, you're doing well. You have this great network. Like, you're just getting out of your comfort zone. You're getting things done. What advice would you give to someone who hasn't taken that leap yet? And then, what can they do to be successful in whatever they're trying to do?
100%. So I would say don't overthink it. You already know what success looks like to you. So you just have to really reverse engineer that process. So you think about someone who is maybe speaking on a stage and they have thousands of people clapping for them. Okay, that isn't the first time they've been up on that stage. So take that first step. You have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, really. Like, you have to put yourself in those positions where you're going to grow. So that means doing the scary thing, maybe putting your name in the hat for you to be picked to then get up on stage and talk in front of people. I mean, get off your ass. Like, get off your ass. Stop being in your own head. Stop worrying about what your friends are going to think. Stop worrying about what your family's going to think. Go out there, know that you have this vision, and just execute on it.
You said what you think is successful. That's a great point. I think too many people get hung up in like what one person may think is successful. Then they're trying to like copy that goal. They're like, do whatever you want to do. And if that's what your goal is and that's what you think is going to make you successful, then just stick to it. It doesn't have to be somebody else's vision. I think that's a good point that you brought up. I just wanted to elaborate.
Another good point too, which like Ali is like has been demonstrated with this, is like, do not care at all about like what anyone else might think. Like, even when I first got into real estate, I used to be like, oh, I don't want to like post on Instagram and like pretend like I don't want to put myself out there, because like, what happens if I don't sell any houses? Like, that's going to be embarrassing.
Yeah.
But you just have to do it, because you'll never know if it's going to work out unless you try to do it. And then at least if you try to do it, you can say you tried and move on to the next thing. No one really cares, like, deep down what you're doing anyways. So once you understand that, you can go and try to do something. And if you're successful, you don't even understand how good it's going to be for your life. And then if you just never try it, no one cared.
Nobody cares. So focus on you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's so true. And I will say that what you just said also plays into a thought that I had, which is the people who you keep around yourself. Because similar to you, maybe not being so gung-ho about posting on Instagram, specifically when you were first getting started, I remember we had a conversation where I think I was saying, like, I'm wanting to do the podcast, and you had, at that point, had started to post stuff on Instagram for real estate, and you too, actually. So you guys just started going for it, and without you guys maybe even knowing, you inspired me. So the people who you keep around you is really important. And also, get out of your own damn head, go for it.
Focus on you.
Focus on you, baby.
Yeah, that's it.
For the people out there, I hope you enjoy this episode. These guys will be back. I'm going to kick their ass in fantasy football this year, and I will see you guys on the next one.
First time home buyers, I'll see you soon, all right?
Okay. All right.